Hello, I'm SA, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
Daniel C. Dennett occupied a singular position within the intellectual landscape, engaging with some of humanity's oldest and most perplexing questions through the rigorous lens of contemporary science. His work did evolve into a comprehensive philosophical system, one meticulously constructed upon the bedrock of evolutionary theory and the insights gleaned from artificial intelligence and cognitive science. He approached philosophy as a form of engineering, a process of reverse engineering the complex machinery of the mind and consciousness, incorporating insights from abstract logic and linguistic analysis. The latter half of the 20th century and the dawn of the 21st presented philosophers of mind with a formidable challenge. Decades of introspection and conceptual analysis had yielded persistent paradoxes concerning the relationship between the subjective realm of conscious experience and the objective descriptions offered by physics and biology. The dominant intellectual currents wrestled with the legacy of Cartesian dualism, the persistent intuition that mind and matter constitute fundamentally different kinds of stuff. Despite philosophical arguments against dualism, the subjective feeling of what it is like to see red or to feel pain seemed stubbornly resistant to explanation in purely physical terms. This was a central problem of the era: how to reconcile the undeniable reality of conscious experience, the inner movie, the stream of thoughts, the felt qualities of sensation, with an increasingly sophisticated scientific understanding of the brain as a complex biological machine. Various materialist positions emerged, attempting to bridge this gap, including identity theory, functionalism, and eliminative materialism, each grappling with the hard problem of consciousness in distinct ways. Simultaneously, the burgeoning fields of cognitive psychology, neuroscience, and computer science began offering concrete models and empirical data about information processing, perception, and behavior, demanding integration with philosophical accounts of the mind. This was a complex, often fragmented, intellectual terrain into which Dennett plunged, seeking a unified, scientifically grounded account. Dennett's unique solution trajectory involved a radical reorientation of the questions themselves. He proposed that many of the enduring puzzles surrounding consciousness, free will, and the self arose from accepting flawed starting assumptions, often rooted in pre-scientific intuitions or outdated metaphysical frameworks. His approach was to build explanations upward from the simplest possible components: genes, neurons, basic information processing, demonstrating how complexity, seemingly irreducible mental phenomena, and even meaning could emerge through purely physical processes shaped by natural selection. He championed a methodology he termed heterophenomenology, a way of studying consciousness that takes subjective reports seriously as data, analyzing them objectively without assuming the existence of an inner, private realm inaccessible to science. This method aimed to capture the richness of subjective experience while remaining firmly within the bounds of third-person scientific investigation. Evolutionary theory provided the deep historical context, explaining why organisms developed certain cognitive capacities, framing minds as biological tools designed by natural selection to enhance survival and reproduction. Computational metaphors offered a language and framework for describing the how information is processed, represented, and manipulated within biological systems. This distinctive combination of evolutionary thinking, computational modeling, and rigorous conceptual analysis formed the bedrock of Dennett's project, offering a powerful alternative to approaches that posited mysterious, immaterial ingredients or declared the problem intractable. His work thus constituted a sustained effort to naturalize the mind, to show how everything we value and experience, consciousness, creativity, morality, meaning, can be fully accounted for within the framework of a purely physical universe. This involved dismantling deeply ingrained intuitions and philosophical concepts that he argued, upon closer inspection, proved incoherent or empirically unsupported. The challenge he embraced was immense, explaining the feeling of prisons, the sense of self, the capacity for rational thought, and the experience of making choices, accounting for these entirely within a physical framework, employing only naturalistic mechanisms. His project aimed to demonstrate that a purely mechanistic, evolutionary account of the mind could be scientifically accurate and fully compatible with, indeed, the very foundation of human flourishing and the appreciation of life's richness. The problems Dennett addressed remain profoundly relevant today. The integration of subjective experience with objective scientific description continues to be a central challenge in neuroscience, psychology, and artificial intelligence. As AI systems become increasingly sophisticated, questions about their potential for consciousness or genuine understanding echo earlier philosophical debates about the nature of mind. Ethical considerations surrounding AI, autonomy, and responsibility require a clear understanding of what constitutes intelligence and agency, topics Dennett explored extensively. Furthermore, the broader project of finding meaning and purpose in a scientific age, one that can sometimes feel cold or mechanistic, finds a powerful advocate in Dennett, who argued passionately that a naturalistic worldview offers a rich and awe-inspiring perspective on reality, far grander than pre-scientific myths. His work provides a framework for thinking about these complex issues, offering tools for conceptual clarity and urging a commitment to empirical investigation, valuing it above philosophical dogma. The enduring significance of his contributions lies in his relentless pursuit of a unified, scientific understanding of the mind, demonstrating that the most profound aspects of human existence can be explored and appreciated while adhering to the principles of naturalism. This foundational work laid the groundwork for his subsequent, more detailed explorations into the architecture of consciousness and the nature of intentionality, setting the stage for a direct assault on some of philosophy's most cherished concepts, God building on the foundational commitment to a naturalistic worldview, one that finds profound wonder in the mechanisms of the universe. Dennett turned his formidable intellect towards perhaps the most stubborn philosophical puzzle of the nature of the mind itself. The landscape of psychology and philosophy in the mid to late 20th century still wrestled significantly with the legacy of René Descartes. Despite centuries of scientific advancement affirming the material basis of reality, a powerful intuition persisted, suggesting a fundamental divide between the physical body and a distinct mind or soul. This dualistic perspective, tracing its lineage directly back to Cartesian thought, posed a significant hurdle for any purely scientific account of consciousness and cognition. The central problem, as Dennett identified it, lay in this lingering dualism and its manifestation in popular and even scientific conceptions of the mind. The intuitive picture held that sensory information from the external world arrived at some central point within the brain, a kind of inner sanctum, where it all comes together to be perceived by an inner observer, the conscious self. Dennett memorably christened this pervasive, frequently unacknowledged model the Cartesian theater. In this imagined theater, a homunculus, a little person or entity residing within the mind, watches the show projected onto a mental screen, experiencing the sights, sounds, and feelings of the world. This model provides a powerful, seemingly self-evident explanation for subjective experience. I am the one watching the show in my head. Dennett's unique solution to this problem began with a forceful dismantling of the Cartesian theater. His critique was multi-pronged, drawing on logic, philosophy, and emerging insights from artificial intelligence and neuroscience. He argued that the Cartesian theater model, while intuitively appealing, immediately runs into a fatal flaw explaining the inner observer. If there is a homunculus watching the show in the theater, what explains its consciousness? Does it have its own smaller theater inside its head, watched by an even smaller homunculus? This leads to an infinite regress, pushing the problem of consciousness inward endlessly, failing to provide a genuine explanation. The theater metaphor, he contended, simply pushes the mystery back one level, leaving the problem unresolved. Furthermore, the Cartesian theater implies a specific moment and location in the brain where consciousness occurs, where all the disparate sensory inputs and cognitive processes converge into a unified stream of experience. Neuroscience failed to provide evidence for such a central processing hub or a single finish line for perception to become conscious. Information processing in the brain appears highly distributed in parallel, with different aspects of a stimulus processed at different speeds and in different locations. The idea of a single point where everything is simultaneously presented to a central observer appeared biologically implausible. Understanding the mind, his approach demanded a radical adoption of an external, third-person viewpoint, one rooted in observable behavior and functional roles. This led him to develop what he termed the intentional stance, a powerful predictive and explanatory strategy for understanding complex systems, particularly those exhibiting behavior that appears purposeful or intelligent. The intentional stance operates by treating a system, be it a human, an animal, or even a sophisticated computer program, as if it were a rational agent endowed with beliefs and desires. When adopting this stance, one predicts the system's behavior by determining what a rational agent with those beliefs and desires ought to do under the circumstances. For example, to predict that a person will reach for a cup of coffee, one attributes to them the desire for coffee and the belief that reaching will satisfy that desire. To predict a chess program's next move, one attributes to it the desire to win the game and beliefs about the current board state and the likely consequences of various moves. Dennett proposed 3 stances one could take towards any system: the physical stance, the design stance, and the intentional stance. The physical stance involves predicting behavior based on the system's fundamental physical properties and the laws of physics, predicting a ball's trajectory by calculating forces, mass, and velocity. The design stance involves predicting behavior based on the system's design or programming, predicting what a clock will do by understanding its gears or electronic circuits. The intentional stance operates at a higher level of abstraction, predicting behavior based on attributed rationality, beliefs, and desires, without relying on the physical substrate or specific design details. The genius of the intentional stance, in Dennett's view, lay in its predictive power and its ability to provide a framework for discussing mental phenomena while avoiding ontological commitments to inner mental substances or states. One could talk about a thermostat's desire to reach a certain temperature and its belief that turning on the furnace will achieve this, acknowledging the thermostat possesses no genuine subjective feelings or experiences. Similarly, one could analyze human behavior by attributing beliefs and desires, while refraining from affirming the existence of a non-physical soul or a Cartesian theater where these beliefs and desires are consciously experienced by an inner self. This approach offered a way to bridge the gap between the physical world and the language we use to describe minds. It allowed scientists and philosophers to talk about thinking, believing, wanting, and perceiving within a naturalistic framework, treating these terms as useful theoretical constructs for prediction and explanation, particularly for complex systems where the physical or design stances become computationally intractable. Understanding a human's behavior by analyzing every neural firing pattern physical stance or every single synaptic connection design stance proves practically impossible. The intentional stance offers a pragmatic, effective shortcut. The intentional stance provided a powerful tool for navigating the complexities of mental language. It allowed for a robust discussion of cognitive processes and behavior from a third-person perspective, focusing on the functional roles of purported mental states. This functionalist perspective, which defines mental states by their causal relationships to sensory inputs, other mental states, and behavioral outputs, aligned well with the computational view of the mind gaining traction in cognitive science and artificial intelligence research. If a system behaves as if it has beliefs and desires, and attributing these intentional states allows us to predict its behavior, then the intentional stance is a valid and useful tool, regardless of the system's underlying composition or whether it possesses subjective experience. This early work set the stage for Dennett's subsequent explorations into consciousness. While the intentional stance provided a framework for understanding and predicting behavior from a third-person perspective, it deliberately sidestepped the thorny issue of subjective experience, what it feels like to be a system operating under the intentional stance. The first-person perspective, the realm of qualia and felt experience, remained a significant challenge for any purely naturalistic account. Addressing this challenge required a deeper dive into the architecture of consciousness itself. This involved proposing a positive model of how subjective experience could arise from distributed physical processes, a task that would occupy much of his later career and form the core of his most famous work. While the intentional stance offered a powerful framework for predicting complex system behavior, effectively treating entities as rational agents pursuing goals, it deliberately remained agnostic regarding the inner qualitative feel of such systems. The realm of subjective experience, what is like quality of being a conscious entity, the phenomenon philosophers term qualia, persisted as a profound challenge for any account seeking to ground mind entirely within a physical universe. Subjective experience posed a central, vexing puzzle, often labeled the hard problem of consciousness. Cognitive functions, like perception, memory, and learning, presented relatively tractable problems. A comprehensive naturalistic philosophy of mind demanded a direct confrontation with this subjective dimension, proposing a positive model of consciousness itself. Dennett undertook this challenge by focusing on the architecture of consciousness, proposing that the very intuition of a unified, central observer receiving a finished stream of experience represents a fundamental misconception. He argued, compelled by phenomena like temporal illusions, where the timing of subjective experiences appears to contradict the physical sequence of events. Consider the phi phenomenon, where two lights flashing in sequence appear to a viewer as a single light moving between the points, or the color phi variant, where the moving light seems to change color mid-trajectory before the second light, which carries the new color, even illuminates. These illusions pose a significant difficulty for models positing a single, definitive moment or location where conscious experience crystallizes. If there were a Cartesian theatre, a central processing stage where everything comes together for the mind's eye, how could the brain know the future color change to project it onto the earlier perceived motion? His unique solution to these paradoxes and the broader problem of subjective experience emerged as the multiple drafts model of consciousness. This model posits the brain processes information in parallel pathways, creating multiple, continuously revised interpretations or drafts of reality. These drafts compete for influence within the cognitive system, shaping subsequent thought and action. What we take to be our conscious experience corresponds to the content of these various drafts as they are edited, updated, and sometimes superseded by new information. The multiple drafts model suggests a consciousness arises from this ongoing process of narrative construction and revision distributed throughout the brain. The model suggests a stimulus representation gains prominence and influence across various processing streams over time, contributing to what we perceive as consciousness. The subjective timing of events, the perplexing aspects of temporal illusions, finds an explanation within this framework. The brain, processing inputs synchronously and in parallel, constructs narratives that are retrospectively edited. The color phi phenomenon, for instance, illustrates how later writing piece of information the second color influences the final narrative of the event. This constructed and consolidated narrative then makes it appear as though the color change occurred earlier in the perceived motion, a process distinct from the brain predicting the future. This model directly challenges the deeply ingrained intuition of a unified, sequential stream of consciousness observed by an inner self. It proposes that the feeling of a continuous, coherent subjective experience is itself an emergent property of this distributed, parallel processing and narrative construction. The self becomes, in this view, the protagonist of these continuously unfolding narratives. It functions as a useful abstraction generated by the brain's activity, an integral part of the processes it describes, complementing the multiple drafts model, and providing a crucial methodological anchor for studying consciousness from a third-person scientific perspective. Dennett developed heterophenomenology, recognizing the inherent challenge of accessing subjective experience directly and wary of philosophical methods that seemed to rely too heavily on introspection or unverifiable first-person reports interpreted at face value. He proposed a rigorous, scientific approach. Heterophenomenology involves taking the sincere reports of subjects about their conscious experience, their phenomenology, and treating them as a specific kind of data, comparable to the output of any complex system. The heterophenomenologist adopts a stance of principled neutrality regarding the metaphysical status of the reported experiences. They approach the reports with a balanced perspective, refraining from accepting them as infallible truths about an inner, non-physical realm and refraining from dismissing them outright as meaningless. They analyze the reports as verbal behavior, as utterances generated by a complex physical system the subject's brain and body in response to stimuli and internal states. The task becomes building a theory of the subject's internal processing that accounts for the generation of those specific reports. This method allows for the scientific investigation of consciousness, enabling researchers to avoid the philosophical quagmire of verifying subjective claims or assuming the existence of non-physical qualia as irreducible properties. It permits researchers to explore questions about the structure and content of reported experience, the consistency of reports across individuals and conditions, and the correlation of reports with observable brain activity and behavior. The heterophenomenological text, the collected and transcribed reports of a subject, becomes the primary object of study, analyzed with the tools of cognitive science, neuroscience, and linguistics. Heterophenomenology provides a bridge between the first-person perspective, the subject's report, and the third-person perspective, the scientist's observation and theorizing. It acknowledges the reality of subjective reports as phenomena in the world requiring explanation. Maintaining the explanation must remain within the bounds of a physicalist scientific framework. It offers a way to talk about consciousness in a scientifically respectable manner. It reframes traditional philosophical debates about the nature of qualia, presenting them as features of the heterophenomenological data. The interplay between the multiple drafts model and heterophenomenology forms the core of Dennett's comprehensive approach to consciousness. The model provides a theoretical framework for understanding how a physical brain could produce the phenomena reported by subjects, phenomena that feel like a unified stream of subjective experience. Heterophenomenology provides the empirical method for gathering and interpreting the data, the reports that any such model must explain. Together, they offer powerful strategy for naturalizing consciousness, bringing it within the purview of scientific investigation and philosophical analysis grounded in physical reality. This strategy has drawn some controversy. This approach remains highly relevant and intensely debated within contemporary philosophy of mind, cognitive science, and neuroscience. Critics raise concerns about whether heterophenomenology truly captures the richness of subjective experience. They also question whether the multiple drafts model fully accounts for the feeling of presence and unity in consciousness. Proponents argue that these concepts offer the most promising path forward for a scientific understanding of consciousness. They suggest these concepts transform the hard problem into a set of tractable scientific questions about neural processing and information flow. The questions Dennett raised concerning the nature of subjective time, the distributed architecture of mind, and the methodology appropriate for studying first-person reports continue to shape research agendas and philosophical discourse, pushing the boundaries of how we conceive of the mind residing within the biological structure of the brain, a structure whose complexity finds its deepest explanation within the powerful, cumulative processes of biological evolution. The complexity inherent in the structure of the brain, a biological marvel whose intricate architecture finds its deepest explanation within the powerful, cumulative processes of biological evolution, serves as a compelling entry point into Daniel Dennett's broader philosophical project. For Dennett, the Darwinian algorithm represents a fundamentally explanatory tool, extending beyond a biological theory confined to the origins of species. He champions it as a fundamental, almost universal explanatory tool, capable of illuminating phenomena across disparate domains, from the genesis of biological design to the emergence of minds and even cultural patterns. A central intellectual challenge confronting thinkers across centuries involved accounting for the stunning appearance of design and complexity in the natural world. How could intricate biological machinery, perfectly adapted to its environment, arise absent the intervention of a conscious designer or some inherent teleological force guiding its development? Traditional explanations often resorted to divine creation or vitalistic principles, struggling to provide a mechanistic account of how complex structures like eyes, wings, or indeed brains could assemble themselves from simpler components. The problem extended beyond biology, touching upon the very nature of order and purpose in the universe. Dennett's unique solution lies in rigorously applying the principles of Darwinian evolution. He views evolution by natural selection as a quintessential algorithm, a process composed of simple, mindless steps that, when repeated over vast periods, can produce outcomes of astonishing complexity and apparent intelligence. This algorithm operates through variation, selection, and retention. Random variations arise. Some variations prove more successful in navigating the environment and reproducing, and these successful variations are retained and passed on. The process involves the differential survival and reproduction of variants. Dennett famously describes this process as a universal acid, a concept that dissolves seemingly intractable problems of design and purpose into understandable, mechanistic steps. This acid eats through the notion of irreducible complexity, demonstrating how seemingly complex systems can be built piece by piece through cumulative, small improvements over immense stretches of time. Applying this universal as into the realm of the mind represents a core tenet of Dennett's work. The human brain, with its unparalleled cognitive capacities, is viewed a product of this same blind, algorithmic process. Intelligence, consciousness, problem-solving abilities, and even the capacity for subjective experience are understood as evolved adaptations shaped by the pressures of survival and reproduction. The complex neural architecture supporting these functions arose through countless generations of incremental modifications, each offering a slight advantage in navigating a complex and competitive world. The brain's structure and function are deeply intertwined with its evolutionary history, reflecting the adaptive challenges faced by our ancestors. Extending the evolutionary framework further, Dennett ventures into the realm of culture. The problem here involves accounting for the transmission, proliferation, and transformation of ideas, beliefs, practices, and technologies across individuals and generations. This involves understanding the mechanisms by which certain ideas achieve rapid spread and persistence, alongside the processes causing other ideas to wither and disappear. Why do cultural forms exhibit patterns of change and adaptation that sometimes parallel biological evolution? Traditional explanations might invoke historical forces, social structures, or individual genius. These approaches frequently omit a unifying, mechanistic account of cultural dynamics. Dennett adopts and champions the concept of memes, first introduced by Richard Dawkins as a potential unit of cultural evolution. Memes are conceptualized as ideas, behaviors, or styles that spread from person to person within a culture. Analogous to genes in biological evolution, memes undergo variation, ideas are modified or reinterpreted. Selection, some ideas are more likely to be adopted, remembered, and transmitted than others, perhaps due to their utility, appeal, or compatibility with existing memes. And retention, successful memes persist and replicate. A catchy tune, a useful tool design, a religious belief, a scientific theory, these can all be viewed as means competing for space in human minds and cultural artifacts. The cultural landscape, from this perspective, becomes an environment where memes struggle for survival and replication. This meme-centric view offers a powerful lens for understanding various cultural phenomena. It provides a framework for analyzing the spread of information, the evolution of language, the persistence of traditions, and even the dynamics of scientific progress. A scientific theory, for example, can be seen as a complex memeplex, a collection of interconnected memes that spreads through journals, conferences, and teaching. Its success depends on its ability to explain data, generate predictions, and withstand scrutiny. These represent forms of selection pressure. Similarly, the rapid spread of viral content on the internet offers a contemporary example of meme propagation, where ideas or images replicate rapidly based on their capacity to capture attention and encourage sharing. The meme concept, while intellectually stimulating and providing a compelling analogy, encounters considerable debate within academic circles. Critics question whether memes possess the clear-cut definition, particulate nature, and reliable replication mechanisms characteristic of genes. They argue cultural transmission appears far more complex and Lamarckian, involving acquired characteristics passing on, differing from the strict Darwinian model applied to biology. Some contend the analogy breaks down under close inspection, risking oversimplification of rich and multifaceted cultural processes. Dennett maintains the core insight. A cultural phenomenon, to be understood as products of a variation and selection process, offers invaluable explanatory power. The precise units and mechanisms differ from biological evolution. The underlying algorithmic logic provides a unifying framework for understanding how complex cultural artifacts and cognitive structures arise and change over time. Applying evolutionary thinking to diverse fields holds profound modern relevance. It informs fields like evolutionary psychology, which seeks to understand human cognitive architecture as a set of evolved adaptations shaped by ancestral environments. It provides tools for cultural studies, offering models for analyzing the dynamics of cultural change. It sheds light on the spread of information and misinformation in the digital age. Dennett's persistent advocacy for the power of the Darwinian algorithm highlights its capacity to explain complex phenomena relying solely on naturalistic explanations, providing a foundation for a thoroughly naturalistic understanding of both the biological world and the human mind. This perspective, viewing our cognitive capacities and cultural environment as products of cumulative evolutionary processes, naturally leads one to consider the implications for our understanding of ourselves, particularly the deeply held intuition of possessing free will. The question of human freedom stands as one of philosophy's most enduring puzzles, a persistent challenge intensified by the relentless advance of scientific understanding. For millennia, thinkers have grappled with finding harmony between our subjective experience of making choices, of facing genuine alternatives, and bearing responsibility for our actions, and the seemingly deterministic, or at least causally governed, nature of the physical universe revealed by science. If every event, including our decisions, is the inevitable outcome of preceding causes, where does genuine freedom reside? This dilemma, sharpened by Newtonian mechanics and later by neuroscience, poses a fundamental threat to traditional notions of moral responsibility, legal culpability, and personal autonomy. Daniel Dennett confronts this ancient problem head-on, framing it within his overarching naturalistic and evolutionary framework. He views free will as a natural phenomenon explained by the very processes that shaped us. He understands it as integrated within the causal fabric of reality, a perspective distinct from a mysterious exemption. His work offers a robust defense of compatibilism, the philosophical stance asserting that free will and determinism, or causally ordered natural world, are entirely compatible. Dennett's unique contribution lies in articulating what kind of free will is compatible with naturalism and how such a capacity could have evolved. The problem, as Dennett sees it, arises from a misunderstanding of what genuine freedom entails and a lingering attachment to outdated, pre-Darwinian, or even pre-scientific conceptions. Many philosophical accounts implicitly define free will as requiring an agent to stand outside the causal chain, to be an unmoved mover, capable of initiating actions independent of prior physical states. This intuition often stems from introspection or theological assumptions. However, a scientific worldview, whether deterministic or incorporating quantum indeterminacy, describes a universe where events unfold according to physical laws and probabilities. The challenge becomes articulating a concept of freedom that aligns with this scientific picture, and its solution involves a redefinition of free will. He frames it as a set of evolved capacities, understanding it as distinct from a metaphysical exemption. He argues that the kind of freedom worth wanting is the capacity for self-control, rational deliberation, responsiveness to reasons, and the ability to evaluate and modify one's behavior in light of past experiences and anticipated consequences. These capacities, he contends, are precisely what evolution has bestowed upon complex organisms, particularly humans. He traces the evolutionary pathway that could lead to such capacities, starting with simple organisms exhibiting rudimentary forms of avoidance or preference. As nervous systems grew more complex, organisms developed enhanced abilities to perceive their environment, predict future states, and select among various possible responses. The development of memory allowed for learning from past outcomes. The evolution of sophisticated sensory organs provided richer information about the world. The emergence of mobility offered a wider range of options for action. Crucially, Dennett highlights the development of the capacity for foresight. Simple reflexes react to immediate stimuli. More complex organisms can anticipate potential dangers or opportunities. This anticipatory capacity is a crucial step towards agency. With the advent of language and complex social structures, humans gained the ability to share information, coordinate actions, and engage in collective deliberation. We can articulate reasons for our actions, evaluate the reasons offered by others, and build complex internal models of the world and our place within it. This capacity for reasons responsiveness is central to Dennett's account of free will. A truly free agent, on his view, possesses the ability to hear, weigh, and be moved by reasons. This involves a sophisticated cognitive architecture capable of representing abstract concepts, evaluating logical relationships, and simulating potential outcomes of different choices. This architecture, he argues, is itself a product of natural selection, favored because it conferred significant survival and reproductive advantages in complex and unpredictable environments. The capacity to make informed decisions, to learn from mistakes, and to cooperate based on shared understanding constitutes a powerful form of control over one's destiny. Dennett argues that this evolved capacity for control and reason's responsiveness is entirely compatible with a causally determined universe. Even if every physical event is necessitated by prior events, the kind of causation relevant to human agency operates at a higher level of description. Our beliefs, desires, and intentions function as causes of our actions. The causal efficacy of these beliefs and desires in driving our decisions persists despite their being caused by our biology, history, environment, and so forth. A person who chooses to eat an apple because they are hungry and believe apples are nutritious is acting based on reasons, regardless of the ultimate physical origins of their hunger or belief. This, Dennett argues, is the essence of free action. He likens this to how we understand the functioning of a computer program. The program's execution is entirely determined by the underlying hardware and code. Yet, we understand and evaluate the program in terms of its algorithms, its functions, and its outputs, using concepts like correctness or efficiency that operate at a level of abstraction above the flow of electrons. Similarly, human actions can be understood and evaluated at the level of reasons and intentions, even if the underlying neural processes are causally determined. Furthermore, Dennett addresses the challenge posed by quantum indeterminacy. Some argue that genuine free will requires indeterminism, operate in the causal chain. Dennett counters that microscopic randomness at the quantum level, even if it exists and propagates up to affect neural events, would grant as a kind of random will. This randomness would fail to provide free will. Decisions influenced by unpredictable quantum fluctuations would be arbitrary. They would arise from chance. Considered deliberation would play no part. The kind of control we value involves reliable links between our intentions and our actions, between our reasons and our choices. Genuine randomness undermines this reliability. It hinders its establishment. Therefore, Dennett concludes indeterminism fails to support the traditional incompatibilist notion of free will. The valuable kind of freedom, the capacity for rational control, thrives regardless of whether the universe is deterministic or or indeterministic at its most fundamental physical level. The historical problem Dennett addresses is the long-standing philosophical impasse between scientific naturalism and the intuition of free will. His unique solution involves dissolving the problem by offering a scientifically grounded, evolutionary account of freedom. He reframes the debate, centering on concrete questions about the origins and nature of sophisticated cognitive control. The modern relevance of this perspective is profound, as neuroscience probes deeper into the mechanisms of decision-making, revealing the complex interplay of neural circuits and environmental influences. Questions about the reality of free will become ever more pressing. Findings suggesting unconscious processes precede conscious decisions, or that brain stimulation can influence choices, are often presented as challenges to free will. Dennett's framework provides a way to interpret these findings. He would argue that such findings illuminate the mechanisms by which our evolved capacities for deliberation and control operate. They reveal how we are caused to choose, thereby illustrating the operation of meaningful control. His work provides a philosophical grounding for fields like behavioral economics, which studies deviations from perfect rationality, and for legal systems that assign responsibility based on notions of intent and capacity for control. It offers a naturalistic basis for understanding moral agency, viewing our capacity to be praised or blamed as dependent on our ability to understand and respond to social norms and expectations, capacities that have evolved within social species. Dennett's compatibilism, grounded in an evolutionary understanding of mind and agency, presents a compelling vision of human freedom. It is a freedom earned, a product of billions of years of evolutionary refinement and cultural development. It is a freedom that operates within the causal order of the universe, drawing its power from our sophisticated cognitive machinery and our embeddedness in rich social and linguistic environments. This view allows us to embrace a thoroughly scientific picture of ourselves and the world while preserving a rich and meaningful understanding of human agency and responsibility. It demonstrates that the most valuable aspects of free will are entirely consistent with our place as evolved biological organisms. Having established a naturalistic account of human agency, viewing our capacity for moral responsibility as an evolved feature of social beings, Dennett extended this scientific program to encompass another deeply human, profoundly complex phenomenon: religion. His work in this domain, particularly articulated in Breaking the Spell: Religion as a Natural Phenomenon, undertakes a systematic effort to analyze religious belief and practice through the lens of evolutionary biology, cognitive science, and anthropology. The central intellectual challenge he confronts resides in explaining the ubiquitous presence and remarkable persistence of religion across diverse cultures and historical epochs, all while adhering strictly to a scientific framework focused solely on natural causes. For centuries, discussions of religion have often occupied a unique intellectual space, frequently treated as fundamentally distinct from other human activities and beliefs. Theological perspectives naturally prioritize internal doctrines and spiritual claims. Phenomenological studies delve into the subjective experience of the believer. Dennett's project adopts a radically different methodological stance. It treats religion as an object of scientific inquiry, akin to language, art, or political systems, all of which are products of human minds and societies, shaped by evolutionary history and cultural dynamics. The problem, as he frames it, involves understanding how such a pervasive and influential set of ideas, practices, and institutions could arise and flourish within populations of evolved organisms. Why do humans engage in costly rituals? Why do they profess belief in unseen agents? Why do these beliefs often coalesce into powerful social structures? Dennett's unique solution involves meticulously dissecting the components of religious phenomena and seeking their origins and functions within the natural world. His approach rigorously applies the tools of evolutionary biology, cognitive science, and anthropology to examine religion's origins and functions. He proposes that religious beliefs and practices can be understood as products of cognitive predispositions that evolved for other reasons. For instance, hyperactive agency detection device, a tendency to attribute agency and intention to ambiguous stimuli, seeing a predator in the rustling leaves, is highly adaptive for survival. This same mechanism, misfiring in modern environments, could predispose humans to infer intentional agents behind natural events, laying the groundwork for spirits, gods, and other supernatural beings. Similarly, our sophisticated theory of mind, the ability to understand the intentions and beliefs of others, might contribute to imagining non-physical minds or beings with complex mental states. He investigates the design of religious systems, analyzing them from a functional perspective. This involves analyzing religious beliefs and practices from a functional perspective, focusing on their effects on individuals and groups. Science cannot address their truth content. What behavioral patterns do they encourage? What social structures do they support? How do they spread and maintain themselves? This inquiry adopts a strictly third-person stance, analyzing religious phenomena from the outside, focusing on observable behaviors, cognitive mechanisms, and cultural transmission dynamics. The aim involves lifting the veil of familiarity and reverence that often surrounds religion, allowing for a dispassionate, scientific examination. The spell he refers to encompasses the powerful emotional, social, and intellectual forces that make it difficult to view religion as another natural phenomenon subject to the same kinds of explanations as mating rituals in birds or the emergence of language. Dennett explores the mechanisms by which religious ideas propagate Drawing on concepts from cultural evolution, his analysis aligns with a broader idea of cultural elements, beliefs, practices, narratives that are transmitted from mind to mind, generation to generation. He acknowledges controversies surrounding the term mean. Religious concepts possess certain characteristics that make them particularly catchy or memorable. They often tap into deep-seated emotions, fear, hope, or offer compelling narratives about origins and destiny, and provide frameworks for social order and cooperation. The intricate rituals, the memorable stories, the powerful music, the imposing architecture, these elements contribute to the robustness and transmissibility of religious traditions. They act as cultural technologies that reinforce belief, build community, and ensure fidelity to group norms. He considers the potential adaptive value of religious behaviors, giving prominence to their functional aspects, engaging in shared rituals, adhering to group rules, and expressing altruism towards fellow believers can foster trust, cohesion, and cooperation within a group. In ancestral environments, groups with stronger internal bonds and greater cooperation might have possessed a survival advantage. Thus, behaviors associated with religiosity, even when based on beliefs lacking factual basis, could have been favored by natural selection acting at the group level. This does extend to exploring the phenomenon where individuals may uphold religious tenets or participate in rituals due to a conviction in the social or personal benefits of belief itself, a state termed belief in belief. People might find comfort in the community, structure in their roles, or hope in the narrative. These factors prompt them to maintain their affiliation and outward expression of faith. Deep internal conviction regarding supernatural claims is unnecessary for this maintenance. His analysis also delves into the specific content of religious ideas. Why are gods often depicted with human-like intentions and emotions? Why do creation myths share common structural elements across cultures? These patterns, Dennett suggests, reflect the constraints and biases of the human mind. We project our own psychology onto the world, creating gods in our image, both mentally and emotionally. The narratives we construct to explain the unknown often follow familiar story arcs, reflecting our cognitive architecture and narrative-making capacities. The diversity of religious forms across the globe, from animism to monotheism, represents a vast data set for understanding the interplay between universal human cognitive tendencies and specific environmental and cultural pressures. This naturalistic investigation of religion carries significant implications. It provides a framework for the scientific study of religious phenomena, integrating insights from disparate fields like psychology, anthropology, and evolutionary biology. It offers alternative explanations for features of religion traditionally attributed to divine intervention or unique spiritual insight, grounding these features in evolved cognitive structures and cultural processes. This perspective informs contemporary research in the cognitive science of religion, which seeks to identify the specific mental mechanisms underlying religious thought and behavior. It contributes to the sociology of religion by providing a framework for understanding how religious institutions function within societies and how they influence social dynamics. Dennett's work on religion presents a powerful case for the universality of the scientific method. It asserts that even the most complex and emotionally charged aspects of human life, those often considered inaccessible to empirical inquiry, can yield to rigorous, naturalistic explanation. His analysis does provoke strong reactions, particularly from those who view religion as inherently supernatural or who find a naturalistic explanation reductive or threatening. The project stands as a compelling example of applying a consistent philosophical methodological naturalism, to understand a fundamental human phenomenon. It demonstrates how embracing a scientific worldview provides profound insights into the origins, functions, and enduring power of religious belief systems, viewing them as intricate products of our evolved minds and cultural histories. This approach invites a deeper understanding of what religion is from a scientific perspective, setting the stage for further exploration into its complex role in human civilization and the ongoing dialogue between scientific understanding and human experience. Such a sweeping naturalistic view, seeking to encompass even the most cherished and seemingly ineffable aspects of human existence within a scientific framework, inevitably attracts considerable scrutiny and challenge. Dennett's project, characterized by its relentless application of evolutionary thinking and computational models to the mind, frequently encountered vigorous opposition across diverse intellectual fronts. One prominent area of contention centered on his treatment of consciousness and the subjective quality of experience, often termed qualia. Critics argued that his accounts, particularly the multiple drafts model, reduced the phenomenon they purported to illuminate. The charge frequently leveled was that by dissecting consciousness into distributed processes and interpreting subjective reports as narrative constructions, he failed to capture the core mystery of what it feels like to have an experience, the redness of red, the pain of a toothache. Philosophers defending the irreducible nature of qualia often employed thought experiments like the philosophical lobby, a hypothetical being physically and functionally identical to a conscious person, lacking subjective experience. The argument posits that if such a being is conceivable, then consciousness involves properties additional to physical physical function, properties Dennett's functionalist and physicalist accounts might fail to capture. Dennett countered these challenges by arguing that the intuition driving such thought experiments is itself misleading, a product of our own cognitive architecture. He suggested that the difficulty in imagining a zombie arises from a deep-seated illusion about consciousness itself, an illusion that his models aim to dissolve. He maintained that the properties attributed to qualia, their ineffability, their privacy, their intrinsic nature, were misunderstandings stemming from pre-scientific ways of thinking about the mind. His strategy involved showing how phenomena we associate with subjective feeling arise naturally from complex information processing and representational systems within the brain, offering a heterophenomenological approach that takes subjective reports seriously as data, while reserving judgment on their ultimate metaphysical status. Another domain generating significant debate involved his stance on free will. Dennett championed a form of compatibilism, arguing that a meaningful sense of free will can coexist with a deterministic or near-deterministic universe. He defined free will in terms of our capacity for rational deliberation, our ability to respond to reasons, and our freedom from certain kinds of coercion or constraint. This perspective aimed to reconcile our intuitive sense of agency and moral responsibility with a scientific understanding of causation. Opponents often felt this definition sidestepped the fundamental issue. If our actions are ultimately determined by prior causes, including the laws of physics and our biological makeup, how can we be truly free in the sense of being the ultimate authors of our choices? They argued that Dennett's compatibilism redefined free will into something weaker, a mere semblance of autonomy, a definition many believed insufficient for genuine moral responsibility. Dennett responded by suggesting this demand for a freedom transcending physical causation represents an incoherent concept, a relic of outdated dualistic thinking. He posited that the kind of control and responsibility we value is precisely the kind afforded by a complex, causally integrated system, a system capable of self-monitoring, learning, and perspective control. The debate highlighted a fundamental tension between scientific materialism and certain deeply ingrained human intuitions about the nature of agency. His application of evolutionary theory, particularly evident in his characterization of evolution by natural selection as a universal asset that dissolves traditional boundaries and explanations, also drew fire. Critics worry this perspective led to an overly deterministic or reductionist view of complex phenomena like culture, meaning, and even consciousness itself. They argued the powerful explanatory framework of evolution risked becoming a master key, unlocking every door, potentially oversimplifying or misrepresenting the nuances of human experience and cultural development. Some scholars felt his focus on adaptation and functional explanation occasionally centered on these aspects, noting that contingency, historical accident, or non-adaptive factors also play a role in shaping biological and cultural forms. Dennett, in turn, emphasized the power of the evolutionary algorithm as a fundamental creative force capable of generating immense complexity and novelty through mindless, algorithmic processes. He saw the universal as a metaphor as highlighting the explanatory reach of this idea, capable of cutting through mysteries science previously found impenetrable. He stressed that algorithmic processes, mindless at their base, generate systems exhibiting genuine intelligence and design. Synthesizing these diverse strands of Dennett's thought reveals a consistent, overarching philosophical project, from his early work on intentionality and the philosophy of mind to his later explorations of consciousness, free will, and religion. A singular commitment prevails to the construction of a comprehensive, naturalistic account of the human mind and its place within the biological world. His work represents a sustained effort to bridge the gap between the scientific image of humanity as complex biological organisms shaped by evolutionary history and governed by physical laws and the manifest image, our everyday experience of ourselves as conscious, intentional agents inhabiting a world of meaning and value. The thread connecting these seemingly disparate areas is the concept of design, understood as accumulated functionality, the result of countless iterations of variation and selection. He saw intentionality, consciousness, and even the structures of religious belief systems as products of this design process, artifacts of evolution operating at different levels, from genes to means. His intentional stance provided a tool for making sense of complex systems by treating them as if they were rational agents, a strategy he argued was both predictive and explanatory, applicable to biological organisms, artificial intelligence, and even human minds. His exploration of consciousness sought to dismantle what he considered the Cartesian Theatre, the intuitive idea of a central, unified locus of experience, which he found misleading. He proposed a model of consciousness as a collection of parallel processes, multiple drafts of reality constantly being revised and edited. This model describes conscious experience as arising from distributed processes, with contributions across multiple moments and locations. This distributed model aimed to make consciousness tractable to scientific investigation, grounding subjective experience in the functional architecture of the brain. Regarding free will, is compatibilism aimed to establish a scientifically respectable notion of agency, reconciling it with traditional metaphysical demands. He argued that the capacity for rational control and the ability to respond to reasons provide a robust foundation for moral responsibility, a foundation compatible with a world governed by natural laws. He reframed the free will debate, emphasizing the practical, evolved capacities that enable navigation of a complex world and mutual accountability. Even his analysis of religion fit within this larger framework. He viewed religious phenomena as natural products of cognitive evolution and cultural transmission, arising from evolved psychological predispositions and spreading through mimetic processes. This approach sought to understand religion as a biological and cultural artifact amenable to scientific analysis, presenting it as a genuine phenomenon for investigation. Dennett's role encompassed a broad public sphere in addition to academic philosophy. He emerged as a prominent public intellectual, engaging a broad audience through accessible books, lectures, and debates. He became a leading voice for scientific naturalism, articulating a vision of the world where science provides the most reliable guide to understanding reality, including human nature. His ability to translate complex philosophical and scientific ideas into compelling prose, often employing vivid metaphors and thought experiments, made his work influential among scientists, students, and the general public alike. He challenged conventional wisdom, provoked debate, and spurred interdisciplinary dialogue between philosophy, psychology, neuroscience, and evolutionary biology. The enduring legacy of Daniel C. Dennett lies in the power and coherence of his naturalistic vision. He offered a powerful, unified framework for understanding the mind, consciousness, and human culture as products of evolutionary processes amenable to scientific investigation. His specific arguments on qualia, free will, or the details of religious origins remain subjects of ongoing debate and refinement. His overarching methodology, characterized by an unwavering commitment to methodological naturalism and the explanatory power of evolution, has profoundly shaped contemporary philosophy and cognitive science. He compelled scholars across disciplines to confront the implications of a scientific worldview for our understanding of ourselves, pushing the boundaries of what is considered amenable to empirical investigation. His work stands as a testament to the capacity of philosophical inquiry, when deeply engaged with scientific findings, to illuminate the most profound questions about human existence, challenging us to see ourselves as intricate, evolved products of a natural universe, and inviting continued exploration into the rich landscape of mind, meaning, and culture from a rigorously scientific perspective.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.